get inside when it's cold and nasty out, and there's really no incentive to go outside unless you have to, and then you don't want to. But those can get to be long days, and there's not things to look forward to like Christmas and the holiday season, and football's over. That's depressing. There's just kind of a slow time of year that there's not a lot going on. I figured it up or tried to. Easter's 9 weeks away. That feels like 2 years if it's not right around the corner. But my point being, it can be a slow time of year at best. It can be depressing if you're not careful. But that's the bad news. The good news is there is positive things to think about. There is, good things to do. The thought I want to challenge you with today is, when we are struggling with those cabin fever season, let's just look to God's promises. It's pretty simple. That the Bible's full of God's promises. If you'd like to turn to John chapter 14, we'll read verse number 3 this morning. I wrote down several here. You think about John 3:16. That's a promise. God loved us. He sent His Son to die for us. John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. That's a promise. But in John chapter 14, verse 3, if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there you may be also. That's hard to beat, that promise, in my opinion. God, that's His promise to come back, if we accept Him as our Savior, to come back and take us home to heaven with Him. And so, when things are a little gloomy and gray, and it's -0 with the wind chill. That is a thing. I've seen -0. I don't understand it, but anyway, it's cold out. But just think about the promises of God and how good He is to us, and it's easy to dwell on ourselves and get discouraged, but we'll just dwell on the things of God, and that was my challenge for you. And in case you're wondering, it's roughly 50 days till planting season.
Amen. Thank you, Brother Andrew, for that. And he's absolutely right. This time of year, you can make what you want out of it. As far as the winter season, it does get long, and winter blues, whatever you want to call it, seasonal depression. I've heard all the terms and things, but you make it what it is, and you can either use it as a restful time and a productive time, or you can sink into misery, and hopefully we don't do that. And can stay encouraged. But how many days till opening day of baseball? 27th of March. All right, hang in there, guys. We're going to be dismissed this morning to our classes.
All right. We will be briefly in Jude and then back to the Old Testament, but saw something online. Said, today we know that the groundhog is truly a prophet. We've seen colder. I will say we were gone last week. We had a good opportunity to go visit our children and grandchildren, and we got to be present when one of our granddaughters was able to sign a letter of intent to play volleyball with College of the Ozarks, a Christian college down in the Ozarks, and it's a nice school. They make them work, so when they go through school, they get out with no debt. And so, anyway, it was a blessing to be a part of that and be able to spend some time with them and go to church with them and all that. but we're glad to be home. And so last time we were here, we were looking at the error of Balaam. I'll read just real quick, Jude verse 11. He says, "Woe unto them, for they have gone in the way of Cain, and ran greedily after the error of Balaam for reward, and perished in the gainsaying of Korah." We kind of more or less went over, and I'm not going to go over all that. As far as Balaam goes, we know that he was hired by the king of Moab to curse Israel, and he didn't do it, but ultimately Israel gave in to Korah. Balaam set it up in a way that Israel ended up giving in. They were attacked an entirely different way from the inside out, and this error was a grievous one because it would affect Israel for centuries. They would struggle with the sins that they committed because of the error of Balaam. And so the attack, again, was on the nation of Israel. And what I wanted to do was just quickly touch on a few things before we move on, because this error also has application for the church today. And I thought about, going into more detail. I mean, I could have went into more detail on things like Catholicism, or maybe some of the false teachers that we have going around our nation right now. But I got to thinking, I maybe took this a little bit different direction. When you look at how they attacked Israel, now they attacked Israel through their lusts, and they were end up chasing other gods and all of those things. But false doctrine can take on all kinds of different colors. And I guess it just happened when I was working on this particular Sunday school lesson and all this. I come across an article that was written by an independent Baptist guy that he's popular online. I don't know that a lot of people probably never heard of him. If you want to know his name, you can ask me later. I'll tell you who it is. But he has begun to take aim on standard Baptists, and his attack is on what he calls Schofield's futurism, premillennial dispensationalism, and Christian Zionism. And so he basically he comes from an amillennial point of view. He's at some point bought into amillennialism, which teaches that there's no millennium. And ultimately, when you're talking about replacement theology, which is what he is pushing, he basically takes this line that there's going to be no pre-trib rapture of the church. There's going to be no literal 1,000-year reign of Christ. He basically completely dismisses the nation of Israel, said that God is done with them because they rejected their Messiah. And he believes that the events of the book of Revelation, we see as the tribulation and everything has already taken place. And they took place back in 70 AD when the Romans came in and destroyed Jerusalem and killed about 1 million Jews. And he basically says this about Israel today. He said, Israel is an asylum for the criminally insane who have done nothing but build torture camps, and they're a bunch of rapists. Now, that's his charges against Israel today. And he also charged, and also obviously this attack was directed towards most Baptists who are dispensational, premillennial, simply because a vast majority of them supported Donald Trump. in the election. And he had all kinds of great things to say about those. And I want to say this. He denies that Israel's God's chosen people. And, and I'll say this. I want to say this. There's no doubt that God has allowed that attack on Jerusalem to take place. He allowed the Jews to be dispersed. He did that to preserve them. When they came in and they destroyed, it started with the persecution of the first Jewish Christians, and it ended up here. It spread the Jews all over the world, but it also saved them. And it was interesting because I began to look at what he had to say about Israel and them returning to their land. And he says it's just a coincidence. It's not a fulfillment of any kind of prophecies at all. God is simply done with them. And I could go through. I mean, he denies that when God said, "I will bless," when God told Abraham, he said, "And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse them that curseth thee, and in thee shall all the families of the earth be blessed." He says that God is done. He's done with Israel completely. And you'd think, what does that have to do with the error of Balaam? But attack on Israel is attack on Israel, whatever it looks like. And so I guess I had this in my mind, but I want to read something. I want you to, I want you to turn over to Romans chapter 11. Just turn back there real quick, and I want to read something to you. Excuse me, this weather causes my sinuses to flare up. Romans 11. Notice what Paul says here. I say then, hath God cast away his people? God forbid. For I also am an Israelite, of the seed of Abraham, of the tribe of Benjamin. God hath not cast away his people, which he foreknew. Wot ye not what the Scripture saith of Elias or Elijah, how he maketh intercession to God against Israel, saying, Lord, they have killed thy prophets and digged down thine altars, and I am left alone, and they seek my life. But what saith the answer of God unto him? I have reserved to myself 7,000 men who have not bowed the knee to the image of Baal. Even so then, at this present time, also there is a remnant according to the election of grace. And if by grace, then it is no more works. Otherwise grace is no more grace. But if it be of works, then it is no more grace. Otherwise work is no more work. And basically what Paul is saying, that God is not done with Israel. Yes, his hand of discipline may be upon them. In fact, you look at Israel today, I mean, they're literally fighting a war on 3 fronts. Excuse me. And so his hand of discipline is definitely on them, but the church has not replaced Israel. God is not done with them. I also want to say this about Israel. They've once again begun to give in to sexual things. A lot of people don't realize that the nation of Israel is one of the most open societies towards the gay and lesbian and LGBTQ movement that's been sweeping not just America but around the globe. They are very sympathetic to it, and so I think there's also this sexual attack being taken upon Israel. But honestly, when you look at the era of Balaam today, I mean, there's just a lot here as far as the way it's prevalent in the churches. I mean, we see the sexual temptations being brought into attacking the churches, and the people's willingness to try to accept and embrace those things. It also has to do with just false teachings that attack the nation of Israel as a whole. Now, back to Jude for just a second. I'm going to move on because I just wanted to touch a little bit on Balaam. And it says, he speaks of these false teachers, and perished in the gainsaying of Korah. as we've been doing, I want you to turn back to the book of Numbers, chapter 16. Numbers 16. The best way to understand what Jude is talking about is to read the account of what's taking place here. Now I've got all of you coughing. It says, now Korah, the son of Izhar, the son of Kohath. Now I want you to keep in mind, I want you to remember who he is, the son of Kohath. The son of Levi, and Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, and On, the son of Peleth, the sons of Reuben, took men. And they rose up before Moses with certain of the children of Israel, 250 princes of the assembly, famous in the congregation, men of renown. And they gathered themselves together, excuse me, against Moses and against Aaron, and said unto them, Ye take too much upon you, seeing all the congregation are holy, every one of them, and the Lord is among them. Wherefore then lift ye up yourselves above the congregation of the Lord. And when Moses heard it, he fell upon his face. And he spake unto Korah and unto all the company, saying, Even tomorrow the Lord will show who are his, and who is holy, and will cause him to come near unto him, even him who he hath chosen will he cause to come near unto him. Do this do, take ye censers, Korah, and all of his company, and put fire therein, and put incense in them before the Lord tomorrow. And it shall be that the man who the Lord hath chose, ye shall be holy, and ye take too much upon you, ye sons of Levi. And Moses said unto Korah, Hear, I pray you, ye sons of Levi. Seemeth it but a small thing unto you, that the God of Israel hath separated you from the congregation of Israel, to bring you near to himself, to do the service of the tabernacle of the Lord, to stand before the congregation to minister unto them. And he hath brought thee near to him, all thy brethren, the sons of Levi, with thee, and seek ye the priesthood also. Let me stop there for a second. Thanks, Shelley. Verse 11. For which cause also both thou and all thy company are gathered together against the Lord, which is Aaron, and what is Aaron, that ye murmur against him? And Moses sent to call Dathan and Abiram, the sons of Eliab, and said, We will not come up. It is a small thing that thou hast brought us up out of a land that floweth with milk and honey, to kill us in the wilderness, except thou make thyself altogether a prince before us. Moreover, thou hast not brought us into a land that floweth with milk and honey. They forgot that they've already been brought to it, and they said no, and they've been turned back. How quickly they forgot it in that. And given us inheritance of fields and vineyards, wilt thou put out the eyes of these men? We will not come up. And Moses was very wroth, and said unto the Lord, Respect not thou their offering. I have not taken one ass from them, neither have I hurt one of them. And Moses said unto Korah, Be thou and all thy company before the Lord, thou and they and Aaron, tomorrow. And take every man his censer, and put incense in them. Bring ye before the Lord every man his censer, 250 censers. Thou also and Aaron, each of you his censer. And they took every man his censer, put fire in them, and laid incense thereon, and stood in the door of the tabernacle of the congregation with Moses and Aaron. And Korah gathered all the congregation against them to the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, and the glory of the Lord appeared unto all the congregation. And the Lord spake unto Moses and unto Aaron, saying, Separate yourselves from among this congregation, that I may consume them in a moment. And they fell upon their faces and said, O God, the God of spirits of all flesh, shall one man sin? Wilt thou be wroth with all the congregation? And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the congregation, saying, Get ye up from about the tabernacle of Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. And Moses rose up and went unto Dathan and Abiram, and the elders of Israel followed him. And he spake unto the congregation, saying, Depart, I pray you, from the tents of these wicked men, and touch nothing in theirs, lest ye be consumed in all their sins. So they gat up from the tabernacle of Korah, Dathan and Abiram on every side, and Dathan and Abiram came out and stood in the door of the tents, and their wives and their sons and their little children. And Moses said, Hereby ye shall know that the Lord hath sent me to do these works, for I have not done them of my own mind. If these men die the common death of all men, or if they be visited after the visitation of all men, then the Lord hath not sent me. But if the Lord make a new thing, and the earth open her mouth, and swallow them up with all that appertain unto them, and they go down quick into the pit, then ye shall understand that these men have provoked the Lord. And it came to pass, as he had made an end of speaking all these words, that the ground clave asunder that was under them. And the earth opened her mouth, and swallowed them up, and their houses, and all the men that appertain unto Korah, and all their goods. They and all that appeareth unto them went down alive into the pit, and the earth closed up on them, and they perished from among the congregation. And all Israel that were round about them fled at the cry of them, for they said, Lest the earth swallow us up also. And there came a fire from the Lord, and consumed the 250 men that offered incense. All right, now that's a long story. But let me just ask you a simple question. What was the sin that was committed? All right. Anyone else have any thoughts? Well, I want you to remember something. Remember when Mike Stanley was preaching, and this one line that he's used, and I'm going to use it a lot. He says, little things are big things disguised as little things. And first off, I think it would help us to understand just who Korah is. It says he's a son of Kohath. Now, that's a big deal. Now, it says that this Korah, the son of Kohath, and Dathan and Abiram, they come up and they rise up against Moses, and they're gathering themselves together against him. So this is an attack. This is an attack upon Israel. But to understand who Kohath is, we need to remember something. First off, that his family was a Levitical family, which meant that they were consecrated to full-time service to the Lord. And so each group of these Levites, each family had their own assigned tasks. So they were each responsible for certain things. And surprisingly, the family of Kohath was responsible for some of the most important things. And so we all know that when God's kind of glory would shine, when the glory cloud would indicate that it was time to move, that they would tear down the tabernacle, and they would pack up, and they would begin to travel. And this is where the problem comes. I want you to hold your place here and turn back just a few chapters to chapter 7. And I want to talk to you a little bit about what is at the root of all of this, so that we can understand how it actually applies to the church today. Because ultimately, that's where I'm going to take it. Chapter 7, verse 1, it says, And it came to pass on the day that Moses had fully set up the tabernacle, and had anointed it, and sanctified it, and all the instruments thereof, both the altar and all the vessels thereof, and had anointed them and sanctified them, that the princes of Israel heads of the house of their fathers, who were the princes of the tribes, and were over them that were numbered, offered. And they brought their offering before the Lord, 6 covered wagons and 12 oxen, a wagon for 2 of the princes, for each one an ox, and they brought them before the tabernacle. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Take it of them, that they may be to do the service of the tabernacle of the congregation, and thou shalt give them unto the Levites, to every man according to his service. And Moses took the wagons and the oxen, and gave them unto the Levites. 2 wagons and 4 oxen he gave unto the sons of Gershon, according to their service. 4 wagons and 8 oxen he gave unto the sons of Merari, according to the service under the hand of Ithamar, the son of Aaron the priest. But the sons of Kohath he gave none, because the service of the sanctuary belonging unto them, that they should bear upon their shoulders. So here we have an issue that has arisen. These princes offer, when they're moving all this stuff, obviously there's a lot of tapestries and things like that, a lot of things that have to be folded up and hauled. And so these princes offer up oxen and wagons to help with that. And so God says, all right, to these 2 men, basically gave all the oxen and the wagons to these 2 Levitical families, but to Kohath he received nothing. Now, why did he receive nothing? Okay, whatever it was that they had to do, they were supposed to carry it on their shoulders, right? One of the things we need to keep in mind, obviously in the church, is that sometimes the most important work and the highest and holiest work that is to be done in the church has to be done by hand. Anyway, do you think God wanted the Ark of the Covenant hauled on a rough old wagon? Or any of the other instruments, the golden instruments? Do you think he just wanted them bouncing along in a wagon? Yes. Immediately. Absolutely. Yeah, and it was on an ox cart then. That's right. So, do you think that you think Korah maybe is feeling slighted that he didn't get what he should have gotten? Might have been easier, absolutely. But see, he's taken this a step farther. He's probably no doubt frustrated because here they are, they're having to carry all this stuff while the rest of them are able to pull it on the oxen, which is obviously a big deal. But there also seems to be a problem with the authority. God had Moses decide who. God had Moses tell the families and appoint them who got what. And Korah didn't get that. By the way, Korah was a cousin of Moses, which may or may not have complicated things. But that kind of gives us an idea of what could have possibly been behind all of this. But Jude speaks of the gainsaying of Korah. Now, what does that mean? What do you think of when you hear the word gainsaying? was trying to elevate his position. I mean, when you think about the word gain, I mean, you almost think about like Balaam. You know, he was in it for the money. He was trying to take money to curse Israel. And I mean, that's what I guess through the years I wasn't exactly sure what it meant until I looked up what the Hebrew words mean. And when you have the word gain, the word gain, the Hebrew word that they're using, literally means to contradict or to vigorously oppose, not just by word, but also by act. It also means to repel or rebel against the Word of God. So it was the exact same word, basically, that was used in the Greek to describe the opposition that Jesus faced during his earthly ministry. In fact, Hebrews 12:3 says, "For consider him that endured such contradiction of sinners against himself, lest you be wearied and faint in your minds." So we have this issue with he is wanting to rebel. He's rebelling against Moses, ultimately rebelling against God. Okay, now let's put legs to this. What is the warning here to the church? Okay, God has set an organized authority structure within the church. Yes. So God established order to everything, whether it be at the home or government or the church. He establishes order, correct? Yes. So what does it look like when someone is guilty of gainsaying in the church? Who are they challenging? What's that? They're under shepherd. They're challenging the order that God has set, literally. Correct? All right. That's easy to understand. So why does the church struggle with this? Why does some in the church struggle with the structure of authority in the church? Okay. We are a royal priesthood, right? I mean, my mind could go 25 different directions here at this point. And any of you who have been around church for a while probably already know 25 different directions that this could be taken and discussed in a lot of detail. But have you ever seen people who maybe, I can do this a couple different ways, maybe we see this a lot in smaller churches. I don't know, maybe it happens in big churches also. I've never been in a big church, so I wouldn't know. But have you ever noticed how there's like established families that's kind of the pillars of the church? You know what I'm talking about? and maybe even some of them can trace their heritage all the way back to maybe 3 or 4 generations ago, when great grandpa helped establish this church that we're in, right? Now, what would happen if you were one of those members of that established family, one of those families, and you felt slighted? What could happen? Cause division. Or what if maybe you've been put in a position of some leadership, but maybe you think that you're more qualified for more leadership than you've been given, or whatever. I can't tell you through the years how many times that I've been questioned by people about what I think the office of the deacon is. I mean, it's come a lot of different times. What is a deacon? Who are they? Well, what is a deacon? He's a servant, right? Simple. Servant's a servant. Servants are lower, they're not higher, right? I mean, the servant in the home of the ancient Jew was not leading the home, correct? He's doing the bidding of his owners, and he was ministering to other people, right? So, is it possible for someone in that office to lose sight of what they've been called to and think that maybe they're possibly worthy of more authority, or maybe they have authority? Is that possible? Sure. Yes, brother. Yep. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've heard of that. Deacon-run churches, or elder rule. Yep. Yep. I mean, I've had men ask me, well, who's going to keep an eye on the pastor? If y'all don't do it, who's going to keep an eye on the pastor? So I don't know who's going to keep an eye on the pastor, but it's not the deacon's responsibility. He's a servant. By the way, the scripture lays out for us what happens if an elder or a deacon or a pastor falls into some sort of sin or whatever. We have ways of taking care of that. The Lord has give us those things and all that. And I'm not going to go into that just particularly today, because that's not what this study's about. All I'm trying to do is help you to understand that it's easy for any of us to fall into the sin of thinking that maybe we can do something better than someone else, or we're more qualified to do something better than someone else, or, here I am, I've worked my way up through the pecking order in this church, and I finally worked my way up to, well, I'm in a position of authority, and I'm going to hold on to it, and I'm going to use it, or whatever. And here's the danger of all that. Have any of you ever went to church with folks that you didn't care for? Listen. Hey, listen. We're people. I mean, we're just people. And we have personality conflicts. We have differences. Some of us are interested in different things. Some of us have different views on things and all that. And see, the danger here is, if you notice that Korah had went out and they were obviously doing a lot of whispering because they'd already assembled 250 other princes to be on their side. And we have to be very careful. And I'm going through this simply not to warn some of you. I'm not trying to say, hey, I think some of you are overstepping your bounds on where you think you are as far as you think where you're at in the church. What I'm saying is we all need to always be keeping our ears to the ground for somebody who's whispering. It says that they murmured against Moses and against Aaron. And how many times have we already looked at this? They murmured, they murmured, they murmured, they murmured. That's all Israel did, was murmur. And it's up to us to keep our ears to the ground, because people can murmur and we don't even realize that they're doing it. And they can plant seeds of doubt against someone else in the church, or against a leader, a Sunday school teacher, or the pastor, or whoever it is. It's not just the pastors, by the way. But they can definitely be sowing seeds in us if we're not careful, if we're not paying attention. And so this study is designed to help us to be able to spot apostasy. We have to be on our toes. And because what happened when Moses called all these people together? What happened? What did God think about it? Because obviously God was listening. He said, separate yourselves from them, because you're going to get in the way of what I'm about to do. And that's another thing. I hadn't even thought about that, Brother Harold. You better be careful. You could get caught in the backwash of something, guilt by association, and you may be innocent. So you don't want to get caught in the middle of that. But let me ask you this. What if, okay, we've tried to have a church business meeting for 2 Wednesday nights and have been unsuccessful. So I don't know if that's a warning or it's just coincidence, all right? But I've been in a few business meetings where I think it had been possible, had we been in those days in a different dispensation, it would have been possible for the Lord to open up the carpet and suck somebody by the heels down through the floor. What would happen if that took place? That's right. Don't want to be, yeah, that would be the pew. But think about that. That's basically what they were looking at. Or what if fire came down from heaven and just smoked old Harriet right where she sat? And there's nothing there but a pile of ashes. Would that not get our attention? It gets yours, absolutely. But you see how God views this. And, I think the reason that this tends to be an issue in churches today is simply because God doesn't open up the floor and pull people down through the floor, or he doesn't send fire down from heaven and smoke them in their pew. And so people get away with things, and they get away with them, and they get away with them, and they get away with them, until ultimately it could end up destroying a ministry. It could destroy, you just name it. They were after Moses's. They wanted his job. They wanted his ministry. They wanted his place of authority. That's true. She said that sometimes when people want the authority, but not necessarily the responsibilities that go with it, which is a good point. But think about that. I mean, you think about how that, but beside the point is God paying attention. Is he listening? Is he listening to our conversations? Is he listening to the things that we're saying about others, possibly? Is he paying attention? Now, as I said, we all have different likes and dislikes, and some of our personalities don't click, and some of them do. I mean, obviously, there's evangelists that we have probably come here that you don't enjoy as much. I think we all have our favorite evangelists. We all have our favorite people, missionaries or whatever. We all have our favorite speakers. We all have our favorite pastors down through the years. You had men that had an influence on you. And all of us see everything different. That's just who we are. But we can have those differences and it not divide us or not be a problem. Mike may like a particular pastor really well, and I may not like him, care for him at all. But that's not a division between Mike and I. That's just who we are. So I guess what I'm saying is when we're living our daily life in this body of believers, we just need to be paying attention. And we want to not only be able to identify something when it's taking place, but we don't want to be guilty of it. The ultimate charge is we don't want to be the ones that are guilty of whispering or murmuring or challenging or going out and building up a coalition, trying to gain 250 supporters so that it looks like you really, everybody's against you or whatever. We got to just have to be careful because God is paying attention and he knows what's going on. How are we doing on time, brother? 3 minutes, okay. So, any thoughts? Yeah, brother. Usually, you're right. They usually don't stand alone. Okay, so why do people do that? Why do you think people do that? Why? I mean, and I'm not just asking you. I mean, I'm asking everybody. Why do people tend to want to have other people with them? Right. I read somewhere, I think, where wisdom is when you see things the way God sees them. And you're right. Sometimes we don't always know the whole story. And if you just know part of it, next thing you know, we can get drawn into it so easily. And so it's really, you're way better off to stand back and pay attention. Do you really see what they think that, like you said? And even at that, I mean, as I said, there's a mechanism for the church to deal. If if our pastor was caught red-handed by 2 or 3 people doing something that was absolutely unbiblical, there's a place for that to take place and be dealt with. But for one to think something, as you said, get a frustration, start building on it, it's easy to get 2 or 3 witnesses, but not 2 or 3 witnesses biblically. We have to be careful. The bell is rung. I'm going to move on. But the warnings are there from the Lord for us. Brother Gerald, would you close this Sunday school this morning, please? Amen.